Yeah, I don't think they'll copycat the Rams, and I guess you mean by doing that they'll trade away all their picks for veteran players. I don't see them. I just don't see them doing it. They've talked for the last couple of years about kind of overhauling things and building that next Super Bowl team. They.
Football Friday. No football being played. Doesn't mean it can't be talked. And we're doing just that here on Bird 365. McMullen, McDonald, and our usual Football Friday contributor. We like to call him Game Day. He's Johnny Mac's tag team partner for Sports Illustrated covering the Eagles. He jumps aboard with us, Ed Kracz. What are you going to do this weekend, Ed Kracz, that you're not going to be proud of?
Probably get out of bed.
I'm thinking you're going out, you're going to get silly, stupid, drunk, and make a fool of yourself. Any chance of that happening?
Maybe 30 years ago, that would have been the case. But,
that was a given every Thursday night, I think, 30 years ago.
I'd like to think I'm a little wiser now and, certainly have more responsibility now. So, I don't really have any plans. I mean, it kind of stinks without any football, right? I mean, I'm looking forward to the USFL draft on Tuesday and Wednesday.
How about that? Philadelphia Stars, I believe, number 3. Who are they drafting from, though? I don't even understand. Who's in the pool?
Kenny Pickett. Why not take Kenny Pickett? What the heck? Maybe
the old USFL would have. They used to steal big-time players. Reggie White started there. The Memphis Showboats. Yeah. Sam Mills, by the way, just got in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was a big USFL star. And the Philadelphia Stars, they were the best team in the USFL. For years, people would say, hey, maybe they're better than the Eagles, that USFL star team.
Yeah, you're right. The USFL took a lot of players. I mean, Irv Eatman from UCLA, big lineman, Kelvin Bryant, good running back.
Yeah.
But I don't know what their pool of players is going to look like.
They're not getting Kenny Pickett. They're not this time. They're not going after big time players, but it's going to be interesting. Although I don't know how exciting it is that the Philadelphia Stars are going to be playing in Birmingham, I believe. So I don't know. That's one of your towns because your son used to live there. So I don't know if Ed Kracz is going to be going down to Birmingham to cover the Philadelphia Stars, but hopefully we'll cross our fingers. Jody brought up before the break, Ed, and I want to bring this up because I thought it was funny, and if you remember the same situation, your favorite Jim Bob Cooter moments of his Eagles era.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty short list.
Remember Nick was doing the press conference. He just walked out of the Novacare.
Yeah, there goes Jim Bob now. Yeah. That's probably my only moment. Although I'll say when we first learned about it, I think it was in after the game against the New York Jets up at the Meadowlands.
He just dropped it out of nowhere.
Yeah, and we're all like, wait a minute. Was Jim Bob Cooter's on the staff? And I didn't really know what Jim Bob Cooter even looked like. So he could have walked right past me in the hallway of the stadium, and I never would have recognized him. And I'm still not sure I would recognize him, but
I still don't know.
Great names, that's for sure.
He does. Man, he was some kind of analyst, but he was never a member of the staff.
No.
But now he's in Jackson. Consultant analyst, would do special projects. But Nick would bring him up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And he did seem to lean on him. Had a lot of experience as a coordinator in a couple different spots, most notably Detroit. But overall, the coaching staff pretty much untouched, which I think is going to be a big positive going into year 2. How much you think that continuity is going to help as far as Nick Sirianni and his staff moving forward?
Yeah, well, it can't hurt. I think it's big for a second-year staff to kind of remain in place and keep growing whatever system you're running there. Some of the members of the staff had some flirtations. Brian Johnson, their QB coach, interviewed with Green Bay for their OC job. And, of course, Gannon, was in the running for the Texans head coaching job. But yeah, I think it will help. They've been pretty quiet this offseason.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of noise. I mean, I think it was 1 year ago today when it was the news broke that Carson Wentz had been traded to Indianapolis, and of course they couldn't announce that until the new league year began, which this year is March 16th. So I would think that there's going to be some stuff that we're going to find out about before that day comes.
Oh yeah, combine. Well, that's where all the tampering begins, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's early March. So that's when you'll start to hear some of the stuff coming out. But you're right. This is the year anniversary, not of the trade, because as you mentioned, the trade couldn't be official till I think last year was March 17th.
That's right.
But we knew far earlier in the process that Carson was on his way to Indianapolis. And by the way, he's not. He's probably on the way out of Indianapolis. So again, when we start looking about the combine and the draft and Howie Roseman, and all of a sudden the Eagles have 3 first-round picks, does that create a sense of urgency for this team? I've been asking everybody. I asked Jody. I asked Guess yesterday. You don't often have 3 first-round picks, so you can't assume you're just going to kick the can down the road, turn them over, keep saying, "Oh, we don't like this guy. Maybe somebody else will get a first-round pick down the road." Does this create a sense of urgency for Harry Roseman? Like, I have to get stuff done now because I have 3 first-round picks now.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't happen often. A lot of teams have 3 first-round picks, but it has happened. And I was kind of looking, poking around at that the last couple of days. And I think the Giants might have been the last team to have 3 first-round picks. It was the year they took Daniel Jones. They also took Odell Beckham Jr., and then later, I think at pick number 30, DeAndre Baker, the cornerback, who I don't even know if he's in the league. I don't think he's in the league anymore. He got in some off-the-field trouble. But yeah, it doesn't happen often. And even in that draft, Baker, I think, was the 30th pick. Daniel Jones, of course, was the top 6 pick. Odell came, I think, late teens. But, the Eagles have those 3 picks clustered together. And, yeah, I think it's important for Howie to do, to rebuild this roster in whatever way he sees fit, whether it's using all 3 of those picks or using, 1 or 2 of those picks to go out and trade for a player or to get future picks in 2023. Because, he does have 10 picks in this draft. And, when I talk about no moves being made, like I'm surprised, like we haven't heard more juice about Andre Dillard perhaps getting traded. He's certainly a candidate to be traded, I would guess. Even Jalen Reagor, we haven't heard a lot from the Eagles or people around the Eagles as to what they might be doing. But yeah, it will pick up steam. And I think Howie does have a sense of urgency to rebuild this team. And, everybody's talking about the quarterback spot, and rightfully so. I mean, I don't think Nick Sirianni could have been any more adamant about Jalen Hurts being his guy 3 days after the season when he said Jalen Hurts is our guy, and there's no secrets about that. But that's where it has to start. You have to decide whether or not you're going to use any of those picks, whether it's the trade for somebody possibly or draft somebody early. That's where it's going to start, and that's where he'll feel the most sense of urgency, is making sure he's doing his job at that quarterback position. So, but that doesn't belittle any of the other picks. I mean, Howie always does a good job later in the draft. We see a lot of good picks come late with him. All the focus obviously is on those first round picks, and he hasn't done a real good job in that round. So, a lot of the emphasis has to be too later in the draft, day 2 and day 3. And yeah, that's where you're going to feel your sense of urgency, is finding players that can come in and help this team, kind of like they did in 2021. They got a lot of help from a lot of different rounds in that draft, and you need another one of those in 22.
And before we get to the draft, the NFL free agency period kicks in. You mentioned March 16th, the first day of the league year, first day you can make plays for free agents. The Eagles are in a good spot as far as cap availability goes right now. Not the best in the league. There are teams that have upwards of $50 million under the cap. The Eagles are in the low 20s, somewhere thereabouts. But you can always create more if you so desire. But when you do that, renegotiate contracts, you eventually have to pay a price down the line. Like this year, they're taking a $9 million cap hit on Malik Jackson. I would say Malik Jackson's era here in Philadelphia was not all that great, and they're still paying for it. So it does help you out in the short term, but you pay for it in the long term. Just generally speaking, Eagles have a bunch of guys they can do this with. They do it with Lane Johnson and Fletcher Cox. It seems like every year. They could do it with Darius Slay again. Restructure contracts. Players like it because they get money up front, but it does eventually hurt you down the line, much like Malik Jackson's contract does this year. How much more contract space do you think they're going to try and create? Will this be considered an aggressive push money forward off season for the Eagles?
Yeah, I think that, you're right. They're paying for some of these previous contract sins by kicking the can down the road, so to speak. I would be surprised if they do that. I mean, they're about $21 million under the cap, and they eventually need to stop doing that if you want to be successful, long term. And I would think you need to stop. But then, if you look at, what they have to spend, it isn't a whole lot. I mean, it's obviously more than they had last year when they had to kind of redo some of these contracts. But if Jason Kelsey comes back, and all indications are he is, I mean, he's going to command probably $10 million. They gave him $9.5 million last year on a 1-year deal, and they spread that out a little bit to kind of lessen the cap. But he's going to command $10 million, and then what are you going to do with that contract? Are you going to play it down the road again to spread that cap out? I mean, yeah, probably. But I can't. Maybe you can redo Fletcher's contract to try to kick that down the road a little bit, or maybe you could try to trade Fletcher to get out from under the contract. Pretty much. I think it's dangerous territory when you continue to do that, because that hampers what you can do in future years. So I would like to see them not do as much of that contract restructuring and push the can down the road, if you will. So the way they're set up now, I think they have maybe one splurge in free agency that they could make. And where would that be? My contention is they need a second wide receiver. They need a veteran wide receiver.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I would look. When you look at drafting another receiver, that's 3 first-round picks you would use on receiver. And eventually you're going to have to re-sign these guys after their rookie deals are done if they're performing, which Devontae Smith looks like he'll be in line for an extension if his career continues to progress. Jalen Reagor, not so much. But if you take Jamison Wilson or Treylon Burks or some of these other names that we're seeing in mock drafts, then you have 2 wide receivers you've taken back-to-back that if they perform, you're going to have to re-up at a big number. So to me, I think it makes sense for them to go with a veteran wide receiver, no matter what that looks like, maybe a 1-year prove-it deal like a Juju Smith-Schuster, perhaps, someone coming off an injury. And then they need safeties. We've talked about this before, and that could come in free agency. But again, I think they have one big splurge. If you splurge on a receiver and you sign maybe an Allen Robinson to a 3-year, $16 million deal, then you're probably going to have to go short-term on a safety, maybe a Marcus May. I know you hate to hear that, Jody, Marcus May, but he's coming off an Achilles injury. Maybe he's a 1-year contract type of guy, prove it deal. He played with Denard Wilson or for Denard Wilson when Wilson was in New York, now the Eagles DB coach. Or you could go heavy. If the Saints are foolish enough to let Marcus Williams go, young safety, you can sign him to a 3 or 4 year deal and make that your big splurge, and then try to sign a receiver on a 1-year deal. But I think they have one big move in them in free agency because they don't have a lot to spend, and you have to factor Jason Kelsey's money into that.
Yeah, going safety from New Orleans worked for him once. Maybe they go back and go that direction again. Marcus Williams would be a nice fit. Let's talk organizational philosophy as a whole, Ed, because we're coming off the Super Bowl. And, you had it was – I don't know if the narrative was correct, but it was certainly out there that, the Rams went all in and the Bengals built through the draft. And, to me, it shows you can win all kinds of ways, but we know this is a copycat league. Heck, I got to ask Sean McVay a question in the pre-Super Bowl press conferences on Zoom. I'm leading my resume with that to try to get an extension here on Birds 365, because anybody who's ever said anything to Sean McVay as a football genius, it's a copycat league, what I'm trying to say. Do the Eagles try to copy the Rams, copy the Bengals? Does it change their organizational philosophy, or are they smart enough to not fall into that trap?
Yeah, I don't think they'll copycat the Rams, and I guess you mean by doing that they'll trade away all their picks for veteran players. I don't see them. I just don't see them doing it. They've talked for the last couple of years about kind of overhauling things and building that next Super Bowl team. They tried to keep open the window as long as they could coming out of that Super Bowl win from the 2017 season. And that led them to part with some of these draft picks to try to bring guys in. I mean, they only had 5 picks in 2018 and 2019. And Howie didn't like that. And now, he's got the ammunition in draft picks. And I don't see him, maybe he'll trade, a couple of them, but I don't see him going all in and trying to trade and build this team, a dream team situation. I don't see that at all. I think they're going to kind of stay the course organizationally and try to build through.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here, Ed, because, you're right. At the time, now 2018, it turns out, was a great draft for the Eagles, even though it was small. Mm-hmm. I mean, they extended everybody. The one guy they didn't extend is Matt Pryor, I believe, and he's still in the league. Yeah. Great draft from the Eagles' perspective. Jordan Mailata, 7th round pick, on and on and on. They won a Super Bowl with hitting on targeted free agents. If you go back to the Chris Longs of the world, to LeGarrette Blunts, most notably the guy everybody forgets, Patrick Robinson, who had a phenomenal year that year as the nickel corner. Jay Ajayi on the trade market later in the season. That's how they won the stinking thing.
Yeah, you're forgetting Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith.
Yeah,
they went out and they put weapons around Carson Wentz, and they felt that they were close. And I'm not sure how close they feel. I think they still feel like they need to add some youth to this team, and that's how they're going to do it, is through drafts. Say nothing of the fact that you need cheap labor, so to speak, at this stage while you're kicking this can down the road with contract negotiations. So you need to hit on some of these draft picks so you can get 2-3 years out of them before you have to worry about potentially extending them. So that,
people forget that Rams' best players were Cooper Kupp on offense and Aaron Donald on defense, and they're both draft picks. They're not, they're not. They weren't acquired. So you do have to hit on your draft picks. But I would like the Eagles to be a little bit more aggressive. I think they're a little bit closer than people think. I think if they make 3-4 good pickups and good decisions, they're right in the mix. Am I crazy with that?
Well, if you look around the NFC, I mean, it's certainly a wide open conference, in my opinion. I mean, you're losing Tom Brady in Tampa. They have a lot of contract situations they have to deal with there. The Rams, who knows if they'll be able to muster, a repeat. It's always tough to come back and win again in the next year. We haven't seen that since the Patriots, and I think 04 and 05. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like it's done that often. So, who knows what Aaron Rodgers situation will be in Green Bay. They've had the number 1 seed the last couple of years, and they've done nothing with it. So to me, they could be close if you look around the NFC and you think, this isn't a very good conference or a very deep conference. And sure, we could get to the top of that, but you could see them make moves and bring in guys with the draft capital they have. I just, I think that they want to kind of keep building and build for, maybe beyond 2022. They want to get a young team, let them grow together. And we've seen that. I mean, I think all 11 starters on the offense at the end of the year last year were all draft picks. And, you want to keep that core together and let them grow together. And then you want to sprinkle in more pieces. But yeah, I think you could see Howie's going to be aggressive, right? He always is. He's going to do his homework. He's going to be burning up the phone lines, looking to make deals. But I think he's going to be smart, and I don't think he's going to just give away picks and bring in veteran players.
All right, Eddie K., I want to bring you back to a name you've dropped twice already today, and it's been a couple of weeks since we had you on, and during that time, the Chris Mortensen report came out about Carson Wentz. It was only 4 years ago, Ed, when Carson Wentz was an MVP candidate, maybe even the leader in the clubhouse. And now we're looking at Carson Wentz having worn out his welcome for his second professional franchise, a man without a team or an island right about now. What went wrong with Carson Wentz? How did it go to spit as quickly as it did?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, I think maybe injuries have caught up with him a little bit. You know, he had 3 straight years where he got banged up. He had he had the ribs his rookie year, and then a very, very serious knee injury his second year, and then he had a back injury and a concussion. You know, those things take their toll. And you know, he's going to be almost 30 years old. I think he's going to be 30 this year, which is surprising when you think about that.
Yeah, he was old when he got here. Yeah,
yeah.
He was an old rookie, as they say.
And I think maybe he's not listening to his coaches and playing the way they want him to play. You know, he still thinks he can be that kid that came out of North Dakota State and make plays with his feet. And he just can't do that. You know, he needs probably to get rid of the ball quicker. He needs to listen to his coaches, and maybe he's not doing that. And now he's soured himself on that Frank Reich. Everybody thought, yeah, Frank will reform him. And now here they are. And I think a lot of it's driven from Jim Irsay, the owner, that they want to trade him now. And listen, I mean, the Colts had many things go wrong down the stretch last year. And that's why they didn't make the playoffs. And Carson Wentz was a big reason for that. But there were other factors too. But, you know, I think Wentz's injuries have caught up with him a little bit. I think he still wants to be that same guy that he was when he came into the league. And he just can't play that style anymore. And he needs to kind of, I don't know, transition his game or find another level to his game, another gear that he can hit. Because he can still play quarterback in this league. I mean, he had a pretty good stretch last year where he was playing well. He was taking care of the ball, which he always seems to do. He never has really high interception totals. But I just don't think he wants to listen to his coaches to try to change a little bit the way he plays. And he's stubborn. I think he's always been stubborn. And now he's become a journeyman, really. If they trade him, that'll be his third team in 3 years. And, you know, that's not good for a quarterback.
Amazing where he was.
Yeah, from what he was, right.
And I'm going to give our buddy Martin Frank credit for this one from the Delaware News Journal on the show brought up. And I didn't think about this, and people are going to get mad, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Not about pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, but as the leader of the team, he was one of the high-profile guys that didn't get vaccinated. And they're paying him a lot of money. And it cropped up late in the season where he wasn't able to practice. And there's a leadership aspect to being a quarterback on an NFL team. And we go back to our other buddy, Chip Kelly, best ability is availability. And you're not, if you're supposed to be a leader and you're not available for your team, well, you can get away with it if you're Aaron Rodgers and you're the MVP. But if you're average, slightly above average, that's where maybe Jim Irsay comes into it and says, you know what, you're not what I thought I was getting as a leader of the football team. Is that a fair criticism?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, the CDC kind of bailed Carson out by changing the rules after he was tested positive, and they didn't have to miss any games. You know, he could return pretty quickly.
He missed practice, though, and
he missed practice.
You know, and he played very poorly in the game, which that's what Martin brought up. You know, maybe he would have played poorly anyway, but maybe he played poorly because he didn't practice the entire week leading up to the game. That's certainly a potential.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, with Carson, I don't think there's any one answer, you know, right or wrong answer. I think it's just a host of things with Carson Wentz. And yeah, you can put that in the hopper and say, yeah, that's part of it too. And you're right about the leadership side of it. If you're not going to get vaccinated as the leader of this team, then, you know, to make yourself available or do everything you possibly can to make yourself available. Yeah, that I could see that rubbing Irsay and others the wrong way. But yeah, here we are. It's going to be interesting to see where he lands because everybody's predicting that he's going to be one of those players that moves on before, you know, the new league year opens. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't have any one answer, Jody. I think it's a host of answers on that one with Carson.
Fair enough. which of you two guys, if either, are combine bound? We just put up how Carson Wentz may have mishandled in his teammates' eyes the whole COVID thing, but COVID rules and regulations are being relaxed and the like. Last year's combine was so weird because it was in the midst of COVID activity. They, I believe, were hoping to be able to get back to a more usual combine this year, but they had things in place in case it wasn't ready to be. Are either of you guys going out there, and what do you expect to see when you get there?
They are, I believe Ed is going. I am not. You are going, right, Ed?
Well, I have my travel arrangements all made, my airfare and my room. I'm waiting on the credential. We've submitted, our organization submitted 25 to 28 credentials, and the NFL said we need to streamline this a little bit. So we're still waiting to hear as a company how many credentials we're going to get approved for. I mean, they seem to credential just about everybody at the combine. So I would expect that we will get the 25 requests fulfilled. And hopefully I'll have an answer. My plane's set to leave a week from Tuesday morning. So hopefully I'll have an answer.
I know by then. Yeah, that's kind of a prerequisite to getting on a plane, knowing you need to.
But to Jody's point, they are scaling back because I saw some complaints from agents already about how they have things set up for the players. And they're still wrangling on that. And they're going to put the players in a bubble still, and they're complaining about that. So I don't know how close it's going to be to pre-pandemic, the way things used to be. Certainly, it seems like the players and the agents want it more like it used to be, but I don't know if we're going to get there yet. But it is going to be very important for the Eagles, Ed, because they do have 3 first-round picks, 15, 16, 19. Obviously, Howie Roseman's going to be out there. It's going to be interesting to see who's with him. Is it going to be obviously Andy Weidel, but is a certain Laurie, not the Laurie you expect, going to be out there? You'll be able to tell us that, and we'll certainly be tapping into. But if you're looking at positions, I know what I'd be looking at first. What would you be looking at?
Well, we've already talked about the quarterback if they're comfortable with Hurts. But, I think you got to look at the quarterback. But my big position, of course, would be defensive line, especially on the edge, where this is a class that's rich in edge rushers. Daniel Jeremiah has 7 of his top 25 prospects as edge rushers, and that's right in the Eagles' wheelhouse. They need edge rushers when you look at, they're not going to bring Derek Barnett back. Brandon Graham will be 34, coming off an Achilles injury. Josh Sweat had a nice season. You hope he can continue to head toward his ceiling, whatever that looks like. But after that, they need help, and there are guys out there. So I would certainly be looking hard at the edge rushers, and that would be one of my day one targets. And that's probably the most important position. I know a lot of people like receiver. I've seen interior offensive linemen mentioned in some mock drafts, and that makes sense to me with Brandon Brooks retiring. And, Howie Roseman will draft players even if there's not an opening for him. We've seen him do it in the past with, taking Andre Dillard when Jason Peters and Lane Johnson were still in town. He did it with Dallas Goedert when Zach Ertz was here and Brett Selleck had yet to retire. So he'll take guys even if there's not a position open immediately. And that could be the case on the interior offensive side of the ball. That's where they like to build, obviously. We've talked about it, both sides of the line. So I think they're going to look at offensive linemen in this draft, and that could be a surprise first-round pick for them. Everybody's thinking edge rusher, definitely need one. I'd love to see him take a linebacker, but if I'm Howie Roseman, I'm looking at all the quarterbacks, doing my due diligence there to see if one could creep up and excite them and make them draft him. And then I'm looking edge rusher. And I wouldn't even be opposed to taking 2 edge rushers in this draft in the first round.
And interior offensive line is somewhere they went last year with a second-round pick, and it worked out quite well. Thank you very much. But won't that be contingent on what Jason Kelsey has to tell us? Which everyone we have on the show says the same thing. he'll come forward to the Eagles and tell them his plans before the first of the new league year, so that if they've got to make plans to replace Jason Kelsey, he gives them plenty of time to do so. Is it going to go right up until March 15th? Is Jason going to make them wait till the day before, or do you think that's something we can hear over the next week or so?
Yeah, I think the Eagles probably already know, to be honest, which way Jason's leaning. I don't think it's been publicized yet, but I think they expect him to return. That to me is, by all indications, the way he's leaning. Now, he may have a change of heart late in the process, but I think he'll come back. And does that mean they won't take an interior O lineman? I mean, yeah, you still have Ciamalo and Dickerson at the guard spots. But then if Kelsey only plays one more season, then, who's your center? Probably Dickerson. Everybody thinks it would be him. And then you have Kenyon Green or Zion Johnson that could step in at guard. So I think it doesn't matter if Jason Kelsey is on this team or not in 2022. I still think they'll look interior offensive line if there's somebody that fits the bill that they like.
Yeah, you gotta start thinking about life after Jason Kelsey, even if he is coming back. And as you mentioned,
and Nate Herbig is an unrestricted free agent, or is a restricted free agent.
Restricted, yeah.
He's a good depth guy, but then Suo-Peta, didn't.
Suo-Peta, we were told good things about Suo-Peta this year.
Yeah, isn't Tesla tanking? Or how's the stock market doing?
Up and down, kind of like Opeta's game, up and down. So
wasn't too good in Tampa. I guess there's no charging stations in Tampa.
Yeah, but after Opeta, you have Driscoll, who his first 2 years in the league, he hadn't finished the season, with a helmet on. He's been on injured reserve, so that's a concern. Is that interior spot is you got to start looking at that, I think, a little bit. And I think
Jack Driscoll, big favorite of Nick Sirianni, though. He's the guy you want on the bus at Jack Driscoll.
Yeah, whether he has a cast on his foot or, his arm in a sling, whatever it is. But, he's got to stay healthy. And, that to me would be a concern is that, hey, he hasn't been able to do that in 2 years. So.
All right, last one from me, Ed. Want to tell everyone to read Ed Kracz, The Best in the Business, si.com/NFL/Eagles, or the easiest way, eaglemaven.com. You probably heard when you popped on. Did you give Doug Pederson these phone numbers of Jim Bob Cooter and Mike McCoy? Because he doesn't know anybody, but yet he managed to put together a staff that people are saying, that doesn't look too bad down at Jacksonville. Is our old buddy going to have success with Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars?
Yeah, I do think he will. They've got a ton of picks, just like the Eagles. They have the first overall pick again. It's going to help. But yeah, I think he'll do well. I love the Mike Caldwell hire as a defensive coordinator. I'm surprised he really hadn't gotten any looks at to be a head coach again. I mean, he had the Lions winning during his time there long ago and never got another opportunity. So I think that's a good hire at the defensive coordinator spot. And they have some pieces on defense that they can work with, and then they'll add to it. So, yeah, I think Doug's going to turn it around. And no, I did not give him Jim Bob Cooter's phone number because, like I said, I'm not still quite sure what Jim Bob Cooter looks like, let alone have his phone number. So I think
he'll saw Jim Bob Cooter. There goes Jim Bob Cooter.
Yeah, I know. And I looked over my shoulder, and there was like 5 guys there, and I'm like, which one's Jim Bob Cooter?
By the way, Doug grabbed a couple of other former Philadelphia coaches to fill out his staff: Segrist, Bremen, Nick Williams. Did you guys know any of these guys, or were they Jim Bob Cooter like for you?
Yes. Rory hasn't been around for a while. I was surprised Ryan Paganetti wasn't on the list. So a little disappointed for him.
He hired a woman, too, to be his assistant head coach, right? I had never heard of her. Elizabeth Myers, I think her name is, or something like that.
I don't know Elizabeth. Is she from Philadelphia?
No, I don't believe so. If she is, again, that's, she's riding shotgun with Jim Bob Cooter there. But, I don't know the name, but I thought it was an interesting hire, because I had never heard her name before. But, yeah, I don't know Rory Segrist or Nick Williams that well. not even really at all, to be honest. I don't think they were here terribly long, but no, yeah, I wouldn't know them either. Just the name recognition would be all there.
All right, then your job this weekend, Kracz, is get out to learn and know more people. That's what you need to do, because if you can't recognize, we're just busting chops.
Yeah, I know.
Always a pleasure, Edward. Thank you very much. We'll get you on in a couple of weeks again, bud. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
That is Ed Kracz, the great Ed Kracz, here with us on Birds 365. All right, McDonald McMullen coming back. I want to debunk a theory here in Philadelphia about factories. But I do want to give you, John McMullen, something that the Eagles are actually quite good at that they haven't gotten enough credit for. We'll explain when we come back here on Birds 365.